that nationalists under the Anglo-Irish Agreement now have a systematic way of making their voice heard, and a start has been made on ending alienation in that community. Is that how you see it?
Well, there isn't any evidence of that on the ground. I think that we have to look at the process of the treaty in two ways. One, how far has it advanced nationalist aspirations, the aspiration to Irish independence? And two, how far has it delivered on the promises made by its supporters in Ireland? And I think on two counts, it has failed. It hasn't made any advance on the ground. All the symptoms of British colonialism, called alienation, still exist. All the promises made by the SDLP and the Dublin government still exist. And in terms of Irish independence, the Hillsborough Treaty is a major diversion.
What would you point to as evidence to justify the charge, A, that it has not advanced the cause of Irish nationalism, and secondly, that the symptoms, as you call them, or the alienation that the SDLP would refer to, remains?
Well, first of all, the first clauses, the major clauses of the treaty, copper fastened Britain's claim to jurisdiction over this part of Ireland, perpetuate and copper fastened partition, and institutionalise the Orange and Loyalist veto. On the second count, the spokespersons for the supporters of the agreement have said that the UDR would be disbanded, that the judicial system would be reformed, that plastic bullets would stop, that strip searching would stop, that discrimination in employment would stop. And all of those are a fact of life. The British judicial system remains. Shoot-to-kill policies remain, plastic bullet murders remain, strip searching of women remains, and discrimination against Catholics in the workplace and in employment opportunities has in fact worsened.
John Hume, do you accept Gerry Adams' basis on which he judges the Anglo-Irish Agreement?
Yes, I do. I accept that it has to be judged on two levels, at the level of how it deals with the fundamental problem of this community and how it deals with the symptoms of that problem, some of which he has just been listing. On terms of the fundamental problem, I think it's a very significant advance in that it has set up a permanent intergovernmental conference to deal with the problem. I don't think anybody out there would expect this problem to be solved in a week or a year. The analogy that I use to show just how significant this change is that if Britain and Argentina had set up an intergovernmental conference to deal with the problems of the Falklands, I think the international community would, as they have in our case, think that a significant step had been made. And I think a very significant step is made. Secondly, the Unionists are the one set of critics who have really recognised the significance of it, because they know, contrary to what Gerry Adams said, that their unconditional veto on change has actually gone. And in terms of the long-term problem, which can only be solved over a period of time, the fact that we have the present governments and future governments who will sit around the same table will be able on a steady basis to build towards a solution. In relation to the symptoms which he listed, of course, we didn't promise some of the things he said we promised, but the agreement did. There was a statement issued with the agreement promising to tackle certain areas of discontent.
Well, let's look at those areas. Let's look at them. Let's take first of all the question of the diplock courts.
Yes.
Now, can I ask you this? Do you accept that as a result of Mrs. Thatcher's correspondence with Dr. Fitzgerald, that the British government is saying there will not now be any increase in the number of judges in diplock courts from 1 to 3?
Well, I accept that the British have turned down the proposals put forward by the Irish government of 3 judges at the moment. But the process that is used here is, first of all, the agreement accepts that there is a problem about the administration of justice. Now that the British government have refused the Irish proposals, they are now duty-bound to bring forward their own. And when they do, if the Irish government agree with them, well and good. If they don't, then they have to do all in their power to reach agreement. That's the process working. But Mr. Adams complained about the judicial process. I find it hard to accept criticism of courts from people who run kangaroo courts.
Well, Gerry Adams, can I ask you about the question of the diplock courts? Don't you accept what John Hume is saying, that if you are in favour of, and if you're trying to work through constitutional processes and persuasion, you have to accept that there will be difficulties, that there are practical difficulties involved here, which have to be, if you're a constitutional politician, negotiated?
Well, you see, in the Irish context, the only constitutionality which Mr. Hume is talking about is British constitutionality. And I'm not a British constitutionalist, I'm an Irish Republican. And the diplock courts is actually the British judicial system. And it wouldn't matter one tuppenny damn whether 3 judges speaking in Irish sentence someone to life imprisonment. The British may at some point in time refine that process because there are some harsh evidence of colonialism inherent in it. But Mr. Hume and his party did promise the Diplock courts. They actually launched a document on that basis. They did promise. I heard Seamus Mullen in a TV studio saying the UDR were going to be disbanded. They did promise an end to plastic bottles. They did promise all of these things.
We are saying that there is a problem, and I've explained how the problem is being dealt with. But all these symptoms that Mr. Adams listed, I have to accept political responsibility for the consequences of my political actions. So has Mr. Adams, and so has his organisation. He knows, and I know, and the whole community knows, that if they plant bombs and shoot people in an area tonight, that there's going to be a lot of troops in the street, there's going to be a lot of houses searched, there's going to be people arrested, there's going to be people go to jail. That is a consequence of their strategy. They know that because they've admitted it in relation to the Brighton bomb, in which they said that it would lead to widespread repression against the Catholic community. That being so, they know that they have the means of stopping that suffering that they're inflicting on their own people. They've inflicted a job loss of 39,000 people by their strategy of trying to destroy the economy. Tell that to the young people sitting out there. You could make a major step forward by stopping the violence, and in months we could rid the streets of troops, get the UDR stood down, start the process of emptying our prisons, and take up the challenge that the Anglo-Irish Agreement throws down to you and me about uniting the people.
Well, I will throw a challenge down to you. I think that regardless of your propagandistic attitude in this whole business, you know absolutely that this state is a sectarian state.
Yes.
That it's totally not viable socially, economically. You know that violence is inherent within the structures of the state. You know that.
But I'm not violent about it.
Excuse me, but you by perpetuating the whole business, now to turn logic on its head and to place the responsibility for what's happening in this state upon the IRS and absolute nonsense, you're starting to sound like Margaret Thatcher in drag, because they're the type of things that Margaret Thatcher comes out with. I think, no, in seriousness, I think you have a major responsibility to do away with the causes of violence, to use your considerable power and authority to confront the British government, not to end up as you've done in the past now at the present, defending and becoming an apologist. I mean, you're now telling us that the people who are responsible for locking up prisoners in Long Cache, McGilligan, are the IRA, that the people responsible for the don't accuse are the IRA.
Responsibility for
I mean, no, but yes, what you're saying, we all have. I mean, your party has never once stated clearly, unequivocally, and unambiguously to the British government that this is a question for Irish people to sort out, and Britain should leave us in peace to do that.
John Hume.
First of all, there are many people who live in Northern Ireland who agree that it hasn't been a perfect place to live in, but we don't all resort to violent methods. We are responsible for the methods to which we resort. I am responsible, as he rightly says, for the political stands that I've taken, and he's been criticising me for them. But he and his organisation are equally responsible for the methods that they're using and the consequences of them. Now, when it comes to talking about the problem to be solved, I disagree with you about what the problem is. I believe that in addition to the British presence, the relationships between both sections of our community are a very difficult problem, and that your methods make that worse, and that the Anglo-Irish Agreement challenges you and me and every other person in this country who wants to end the divisions between the people of this island. It says that if the people of the North want unity, they can have it. That means to me that the British government are saying Irish unity is a matter for those who want it, persuading those who don't.
Let the British government leave.
I am prepared.
Let the British government leave.
Hold on.
But why don't you challenge them to leave?
I am prepared to take up that challenge.
Do you, Mr. Hume, want to see a British withdrawal?
Can I finish? I am prepared to take up that challenge and to set down what I believe to be a long-term process. I don't think, and I'm honest enough to tell people that that's what I believe. I don't think there's a year of victory, as you people told us in 1974. We're still waiting 2,000 deaths later for that year of victory. I believe it's a long-term process. I believe I have to exercise a lot of persuasion, but I'm prepared to take that on, to set out that strategy, and to invite other people, including yourself, to join in that process. And at the end of that day, as Tone said, and you've always misquoted him, as Parnell said, as Sean Lemass said, that to get freedom as well as unity, you must first conciliate the Irish Protestant. John Burst, not
please. I must reply to all of that, Seamus. Well, first of all, the last quote I heard from about Will Tone was Austin Curry, a founder member of your party, who told us at Sunningdale that Will Tone's objectives have been fulfilled. Now, you're talking about promises, you're talking about claims. Secondly, the situation,
None of
obviously,
our
there must
mistakes
be.
in their grave.
Excuse me,
None
lots
of
of
our
your
mistakes
mistakes are in
are
their
in their
grave.
graves.
We're in the middle of what you call the healing process.
Yes.
You should go to the City Hall on Saturday and watch the new unionist leadership, which you promised was going to emerge after the Orange Marching season. You didn't tell us which Orange Marching season. It'll be out there with Mr. Paisley at the Nuremberg rally at the City Hall.
Can I ask you, are you prepared to talk to unionists on any basis at the moment involving your terms for devolved government here?
I'm prepared to sit down with a unionist at any stage. I've said this till I'm blue in the face in order to spell out to them our view of the future and to ask them what in that view of the future threatens their interests. I'm prepared to do that at any time.
John Hume and Jerry Adams.